What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king. Welcome you back to the world of Destiny. So, I meant to make this video relatively soon after the Destiny 2 reveal, but unfortunately about 3 days after the reveal, I lost my voice completely, and it stayed gone for about 10 days, so I was never able to record this video. Well, now that the dust has finally settled, like, really settled, and in fact E3 is on the horizon, I am going to give you guys my Destiny 2 wish list. Things that I don't exactly expect in Destiny 2, but I think would be a real benefit to the game if they actually took place. And honestly, I think some of these things are a no-brainer, and possibly even needed to keep Destiny 2 a lot more alive than Destiny 1 ever was. So, first things first, let's talk about PvE things I want Bungie to address. And this is also kind of related to PvP, but it's more to PvE's benefit. And that means whenever they're doing balance patches, please separate PvE and PvP. Please do not balance them together. That should never happen. That was a big thing that plagued Destiny a lot throughout the game's life cycle, is whenever they would release a patch, they would nerf a gun's perk, or they would nerf its damage, more specifically its perk, and that nerf would carry over to PvE. And I think that's just wrong. One of the big ones, and well, I'll list two big examples, were Thorn and Red Death. Thorn was the king of PvP in year one. It could two-tap people in the head. It just absolutely destroyed people. Heck, it could even, well, I think it could two-tap people in the body. No, maybe it was just the head. Two-tap people in the head, three-tap them in the body very, very easily, all due to the burn on the weapon. Very, very strong. And when the Taken King came out, they changed the weapon's perk so that it would start from a very, very weak burn, but it would stack the more you hit an enemy with it, eventually rounding out to, well, you still needed 3 headshots to kill somebody. This was actually a perk that was a lot more useful for PvE. I know Thorn wasn't really a PvE-oriented gun, but we never really got to use Thorn in all of year 2. It didn't come back until the Rise of Iron patch came out, or the Rise of Iron expansion, excuse me. So we never got to really see this perk in effect until it had already been nerfed more and more and more. Now, again, granted, Thorn was a PvP-oriented weapon, but it still kind of sucks we never got to see it the way it was supposed to be. And just because of how it dominated in PvP for a while. And again, I just don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair, especially to people who don't play PvP, period. Red Death was a probably even worse offender. It had a perk where when you killed somebody, you would automatically start your health regen. I mean, this was a kind of a broad thing for a lot of self-healing abilities, is it would just start health regen. Well, early on in the Rise of Iron expansion, they changed this so that a lot of things would only restore portions of your health. Mostly just for PvP's sake, so it wouldn't feel overpowered. Well, again, this crippled the gun in PvE, especially because the weapon's archetype wasn't all that great to begin with. In fact, in retrospect, Red Death is a really bad gun with an amazing perk that turns it into a good gun. But upon crippling this perk, they just made Red Death a mediocre to bad gun. And while, yes, it was a very good perk for PvP, it's not fair for PvE. Again, there are so many players. In fact, I believe there's been statistics put out that half the player base, even to this day, still does not even touch PvP on any given week. It's just not fair to them. I mean, you can't use these guns because they were too good in PvP, and thus they are crippled in PvE. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that the game should be balanced around that. I think another big one was hand cannons. They added this hand cannon bloom so that they weren't super overpowered in PvP, and yet, again, it crippled them in PvE a little bit. I mean, obviously not as much, but still, it had an effect, and it shouldn't. Please separate this in Destiny 2, Bungie. You can't do this anymore. Moving on to PvP. This is probably the most off base and least likely thing to happen, but I really would think it would do a good service to the game and its PvP economy, and that is add a ranked and unranked mode, for crying out loud. Okay, let's be honest. Crucible now is ranked without the rewards. That's what it's been since the launch of the game, because it's the only way to play the game aside from Trials of Osiris, which is only around 4 days a week. 4 days a week, yes. And even then, Trials of Osiris isn't really a ranked mode. It's kind of got a completely different economy to it, and a lot of people stay away from Trials of Osiris like the plague because of cheaters and the like and whatnot. I mean, it's overrun with them. So really, we only have the regular Crucible to go to, which is constantly ranked, because there's nothing above it. There is no incentive not to play as hard as you can, because that's the only way to play. All of your elo, all of your statistics are measured in these unranked modes, when really we should be putting all that in a ranked mode where meta would be king and people would have their statistics to worry about, while in unranked you don't have all that to worry about, and because you don't get rewarded for it anyway. The drops at the end of every match are random as it is. I mean, I think it would make for such a healthier game economy, and it would encourage so many people to play PvP that wouldn't otherwise play it. Because that's the other thing, is that cripples your player base. It tightens your player base. It makes less people want to play, and thus hurts your matchmaking, which has been a huge issue with Destiny since the launch of the game. Well, more so since skill-based matchmaking was introduced. I'm not really going to go into that because, whatever. I have other things I'll talk about regarding that in a second. But anyway, I think it would just be healthier for the game in general if you separated it with ranked and unranked, because unranked is an environment where people are allowed to use what they want. Of course, people still want to win, but people have a lot less pressure to play with whatever's the best at the moment. They can play, for the most part, with what they want to use. Now, on to my next point, which is more frequent updates and patches, specifically relating to PvP. Please, let's not have any more 6-month to 8-month metas anymore, Bungie. For crying out loud, the only meta you guys had that lasted under than 3 months, or less than 3 months, was the high impact pulse rifle meta back at the end of House of Wolves, and honestly, that should be the norm. Switch it up a lot more often. I get that you guys are like, well, we gotta test everything, we gotta make sure it's not broken. Honestly, so what if it's broken for a little bit? Just so what? Like, obviously we don't want it buggy, but if a weapon's pretty overpowered for a little bit, just switch it up. Just get to fixing it. Just let the community figure out, because that's the thing, is no matter how much testing you guys do, community's gonna break it anyway in like a week. It always happens. Every single time they push out a new patch or something like that, they're like, well, we tuned down hand cannons and then like in 2 days everyone's using a hawksaw. I mean, that's how it always was in Destiny. It's always been, it's always going to be that way. Everyone's going to figure out the meta extremely quickly. The meta is a lot more defined in a game like Destiny as opposed to more team-based games. You figure out which weapons have the fastest time to kill. It's simple math. They've got people that are on it all the time on Reddit, on YouTube, that figure this stuff out in a freaking instant, and you use that data and you go make another change. You have to constantly be pushing this stuff out, please. It's okay if it's a little bit sloppy, as long as it's not... I mean, and let's be real, every single one of their patches was a little bit sloppy. But for crying out loud, make it more frequent, make things fluctuate more, make it so that people can have their time in the sun when certain people prefer certain weapons over other ones. I mean, for crying out loud, I like scout rifles, man. They never got to shine in Destiny 1. They were always just okay. Come on, man. I mean, except for Mida, but that was like the one exception. Anyway, last but not least, when it comes to PvP, is please make looser and clearer matchmaking parameters. Now, there was an actual statistic that is tracked that is essentially your MMR in Destiny 1, and that is known as combat rating. However, it is the most inconsistent MMR rating I have ever seen. It is not account-based, it is character-based, and it makes no sense in the slightest. Not to mention, you can't drop your combat rating at all. It's impossible. You can only bring it up. I mean, obviously you can dip it a little bit, but it's really hard to do that. Combat rating is something that is built over time rather than something that is built in a session of some sort, or something that is changed in a session, which is how MMR should be. If you're having really good games, if you're getting actively better, your MMR should get higher. If you're playing badly, if you're struggling a lot, your MMR should drop. That's how it's supposed to work. But it doesn't in Destiny. My Warlock that I've had since the launch of the game, top 0.5% combat rating in the entire Destiny player base. Top 0.5%. Hunter, I've had it for 2 years. Top 16%. Titan, I've had for 4 months. Top 70%. Like, as in bottom 30%. Like, it's a very different Crucible experience depending on the character I go in. If I go in with my Warlock, I will get rolled. I will constantly be paired up against the best players in the entire game. I go in with my Titan, I'll play against people that I don't even know how to use a controller properly. If I go in with my Hunter, it's actually pretty fair for me and it feels pretty balanced. It makes no sense. That's not how it should be. And I think you guys just need to loosen things up more. Fine, skill-based matchmaking. I know everyone cries foul and says it's the devil, but let's be honest, every PvP game has it to an extent these days. It's how they utilize the skill-based matchmaking that makes it a good or a bad experience, and the way Destiny does it is bad. The way other games do it, and I think the way Destiny ought to do it, is it needs to be more loose. It needs to have a wider range to it. It needs to be able to fluctuate more often. I mean, that's part of the healthy experience in Destiny is, I mean, you go in one game, you get slaughtered, you shouldn't be getting slaughtered the next 10 games after that. You shouldn't have to put the game down because you can't compete. You should, oh, I lost. All right, drop down a little bit. Play people that are worse than you. Oh, you beat them in that game. All right, bring it back up again. I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. That's how PvP is supposed to work, especially in a non-competitive environment, especially in an unranked environment. Please make ranked and unranked a thing. Ugh. Anyway, last things I want to touch on are more general things, general ideas I have. They are not PvP or PvE specific. First of all, more events. Please, Destiny. I keep saying Destiny. Please, Bungie. We need more events. The Dawning, which was the Christmas event in Year 3, and Age of Triumph were the only examples of really, really well done events, and I think they all need to be like that, and they need to be more frequent. They need to be more kind of on a regular basis, honestly, and they can't just be Iron Banner. You gotta pack more content in there. You gotta put a little bit more effort into making these events something worth doing. Again, I think the Dawning and Age of Triumph were perfect. That is the perfect amount of content you need to add. Now, if you could make that every 2 months, that would be fantastic. Make an event go on a month, off a month, on a month, off a month. Just do stuff like that, and honestly, I think your player base would be incredibly active and golden. Sometimes just refine the events and bring them back the next year. Sometimes completely change up the events. If you guys have the creative freedom to do that, do it. Please, just make it so that things are happening more consistently that aren't just Iron Banner and Trials of Osiris. For crying out loud, keep your player base active, please. And last, this is probably the most nitpicky thing I have, is that change that you added to Age of Triumph for the weapons. The weapon rolls change every single week. To that extent, please keep that in the next game. And if not, just change up the weapon types more often. Change up the weapon archetypes more often. Throw a lot more weapons in the weapon pool, for crying out loud. Don't just have one of each for each faction. Please add a lot more weapons to the game, add a lot more variety, so that we're all not just chasing the palindrome, so that we're all not just chasing the IS Luna or just the 1,000-yard stare. We need to have more variety, guys. Please, 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 and change it up. And honestly, I think do it in a way that makes it harder to get really, really good weapons. Change it up so frequently, honestly, that it's really hard to grind for that perfect weapon. If you guys did that, that would be great, because honestly, I think Destiny, as it went on, it totally lost that ability, especially even by Year 2. It totally lost that whole feeling of, wow, I got this God Roll weapon, look at me go. There are 2 God Roll weapons I got in Year 1. There was a shotgun I had that was the perfect archetype, and it had shot package, and it had hammer forge, like max range. My favorite shotgun ever. I had a sniper rifle with double down. I would spawn in with full 24 rounds of sniper ammo in a Crucible match. Those 2 weapons were like my God Rolls, and no one else that I met really had anything else like them until House of Wolves, when you could start re-rolling weapons. It felt great to have them. I mean, obviously people had other weapons that they liked a lot, but that is a feeling that has not been in the game since, and I really think they need to bring it back. Please, make these really, really good weapons harder to get, for crying out loud. That needs to be a thing more often. And if you have to, dump a bunch of terrible perks into the pool. I don't care. Dump a lot more good perks into the pool, a lot more variety. Freak, just dump more perks in there. Double, triple the amount of perks that are possible on every weapon. Just add variety, please. Everyone has a Luck in the Chamber in Outlaw Palindrome now. Everyone has a Luck in the Chamber rangefinder IS Luna now. I don't want that anymore. Please, let's fix that in Destiny 2. Anyway, thank you all so very much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this video. I want to know what you guys think about what Destiny 2 needs, what you want from Destiny 2, because I think they have all their other bases covered. I mean, one of the other things I guess I could quickly touch on is please don't make your story solely based on cutscenes. Let's have some codex and journal entries. Let's have some other extra lore, because I think just doing cutscenes is also a lazy way to tell stories. But I mean, other than that, I don't really have anything else that I want from Destiny 2. So let me know what you guys think Destiny 2 needs, what you think would help make it a better experience that doesn't involve completely changing the way the game is, talking to every single person who goes, it's not just a sequel, it's an expansion. Well, what the hell do you expect? It's Destiny. Did you suddenly expect it to turn into Borderlands? Did you suddenly expect it to turn into Call of Duty? No. It's Destiny. It's gonna be more Destiny. That's what a sequel is. Idiots. Anyway, thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.